Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack.
You know who I can do without? I can do without the people in the video store.
Which ones?
All of them. They never rent quality flicks. They always pick the most intellectually devoid movie on the racks.
And now, on with the show.
Kids, they're the hope of the future.
You two really must have a lot of fun together.
Yeah, these little rascals really make life worth living.
But Ben and Flo have a problem.
Are you absolutely sure there's no hope?
Oh, none whatsoever. Florence, why can't we adopt?
Okay, let's get a kid.
Okay, you want a little baby. Well, old babies are little. It's no problem there. Just this morning, I came upon a 7-year-old. Smart as a tack. A little rambunctious. But weren't we all at that age?
Oh, he does look very presentable in that little bow tie.
He's evil. That's a wicked mind. Look what he did in art class.
Skeletons?
Headless corpses?
No, please, don't hyperventilate. Either Junior goes or you find yourself some new nuns.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net's Loose Cannon. I am one of your video store clerks today. I am Mike the Birdman, but I'm not alone as we go through the big box VHS aisles on this lonely, I don't know what day this is coming out, but I'm joined with my popcorn expert, my movie film buff, the guy who knows everything. If it's ever been put to celluloid or digital, he probably knows about it.
It's Ken Reels from This Anime.
So yes, as you guys may have noticed, I have taken over the show since Alex is enjoying his vacation to play lots of video games, not die in the heat waves we've been having this past summer here in Ontario. But this edition of Loose Cannon is going to be a little bit different because I don't think we've covered many children's movies on this particular podcast. And I was kind of looking through the movies that I have access to, and I thought back to when I was a kid in the 90s. And one of the movies that I remember seeing at the drive-in, I saw both of these there growing up with my next door neighbor, maybe my mom and dad, is I saw the movies Problem Child 1 and 2 back in 1990 and 1991 respectively. And then another movie that I picked out for us to talk about, which I didn't realize these three movies were connected in a very 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of way. We're going to talk about I think this movie came out in 94, I want to say, maybe a little bit later.
It is 1994, correct.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about Macaulay Culkin's animated movie, The Page Master. And the reason I picked that one is because I seem to remember a lot of advertisements for it. I want to say there was even Burger King toys, but I remember advertisements running for it on the Rookie of the Year VHS and a couple of other things. And I just kind of realized as I was picking things out for this show, I've never seen it. So literally before this record started, we're recording this on a Sunday afternoon. I finished that movie about a half hour ago. And I've got some thoughts. So let's kind of kick things off with the Problem Child movies. So in the 1990s and the late 1980s, kids' movies were really kind of hitting their stride, though the 90s, I would argue, was kind of the golden era for let's make a summer blockbuster kids' movie that would open in either June, July, or August. It's something you could take the kind of family to, and you don't get as many of these things now. Like, you get the odd one here and there. The last one I can think of that was super, super, super kid-focused, but it opened during a weird time, was the John Cena movie from Nickelodeon, Playing with Fire, which is underrated, by the way.
A lot of those Nickelodeon movies are underrated, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I've done this. This was ages ago. This is almost a decade ago. I did this massive decision. Like, I'm going to do a theme month for the movie podcast that I had done at the time. And it was all Nickelodeon movies. And one of the ones that really surprised me was there was an Eddie Murphy one called Imagine That I think is just criminally underrated and criminally chastised because I was like, okay, you put the opening of that movie in context with the rest of the movie and it actually makes sense.
I think we should do a Nickelodeon thing maybe sometime when you and I can get a chance to collaborate again, because I've never seen Harriet the Spy, for example, and I just saw Good Burger for the first time last month. Holy shit, was that a fucking experience. So the Problem Child movies, so I started doing a little bit of reading on the wiki, because what good research doesn't start on Wikipedia? And I found the director for this movie is a guy named Dennis Dugan. And this is a guy who I didn't realize has quite the 90s pedigree when it comes to movies. And he's worked a lot with Happy Gilmore Productions and Adam Sandler. So he did Happy Gilmore, Big Daddy. This one came out later. I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry. You Don't Mess with the Zohan, which is a movie that I found surprisingly funny. He also did Grown Ups, which I like the first one, and I'm probably going to get chastised for that. And I started watching this movie with my sister / roommate Shannon. We started watching Jack and Jill. And I'm not going to lie, I was weirdly entertained by it.
That movie is so bad, it's actually quite entertaining.
Yeah, it's so out there. You're like, why am I watching this car wreck in slow motion and I can't look away? So the Problem Child movies, so my first memory of this starts, like I said, going to the movie theater and seeing this at a drive-in. So this opened on July 27th, 1990. And I just remember really enjoying this because it's goofy, it's juvenile. Long story short, the movie tells the story of an orphan named Junior, played by actor Michael Oliver. And he's this redheaded little devil child who basically tries to, without saying it, murder people at times, and it's an escalating. You can
easily recut the movie
into a horror
trailer.
movie.
Yeah, the trailer can be a horror movie if you really want to.
It's friggin' ridiculous. So he's in this orphanage. There's this guy played by Gilbert Gottfried, God rest his soul, and he's trying to get Junior out of the orphanage from all these nuns. And fortunately, John Ritter's character of Ben Healy, him and his wife are looking to start a family. Unfortunately, the wife is infertile. And there's this great gag at the beginning of the movie where they have the woman's reproductive system in like those medical anatomical dummies things. And it just pops off when like he moves. He's like, that was your uterus. That's not supposed to happen. And then the fallopian tubes fly off. He's like, that's not supposed to happen either. Let's pretend it didn't. And it's a blink and you'll miss it visual thing. And it's played for laughs. And I think only adults are really going to kind of chuckle at that. So they start talking about adoption. John Ritter's character, Ben, is all for it. The wife is very much against it. She's very much into appearances. How is this going to look to the neighbors? She wants the prestige of having a child without going through the work, because Gilbert Gottfried gives her a scenario where he's like, yeah, you'll gain 50 or 60 pounds. You'll sit on your ass all day eating chocolate and you can clean up shitty diapers and this, that, and the other thing. And she's like, yeah, I don't think I want to do that. So maybe adoption's not so bad after all. So Gilbert Gottfried's character, Mr. Peabody, I think is the name, tricks them into adopting Junior. Junior comes home and immediately makes, I wish I could repeat this word, when he enters his room at the Healy house, it's full of clowns. And he's like, actually, I don't know, Ken, if I'm quoting something directly, can I get away with this? Because
I mean,
it's the delivery that kills me. Because it's the way the kid says this word. It slays me, and it's terrible. You know what? I'm going for it. So this is Junior, Michael Oliver's character, and I quote, this is him saying this. He walks into the room, there's all these clowns, and it's like something out of It. And he's like, these clowns are retarded. And it's just the way that he says it. It kills me because I can just imagine that was a genuine delivery of that line. And eventually they go downstairs and they run into, I think it's the actor's name is Jack Warden.
Yes.
And he plays Big Ben Healy, who's this guy who owns this huge sporting goods store, and he wants to run for political office. And he's like, you've adopted Satan himself. That kid's a bad seed. And the rest of the movie follows this weird B subplot where Michael Richards, so Kramer from Seinfeld, plays the bow tie killer, where you're supposed to believe he's this ultimate badass. And Junior's been writing to him in prison. And he wants to break out of prison and think he's going to go on this crime spree with this child.
Well, he doesn't even realize it's a child.
Yeah, he thinks it's some hardened badass. And he's like, this person is so messed up. We're going to cause so much chaos. So it's like the Joker finding his Harley Quinn. And it's nuts. So the movie starts a series of misadventures and misunderstandings. And there's this great montage scene, which lasts like 10 minutes, where Junior gets invited to one of the neighborhood kids' parties. It doesn't go so well. There's this little girl who's a complete brat who says, I don't want this kid here. And then the mom starts threatening to take away her presents and ice cream. And the girl eventually relents, but it eventually ends with a piñata full of like pickled eggs and some other shit. All her stuff gets tossed into a pool, a frog in a punch bowl. I think he pees in something at some point. No, that's the camping trip. And it's insane. And you just see this little girl have her party utterly destroyed. And I know this movie is meant to be a black comedy. And while I'm watching it, Ken, I can't help but feel this was weirdly mean-spirited.
Oh, it was immediately mean-spirited. And one of the things that really kind of bugged me that I noticed was the fact that a lot of Michael Oliver's dialogue is ADR'd, like really obviously ADR'd. And it just kept distracting me.
Yeah, like there's just so many weird little things in here that it's so off-putting. So to not spoil the big surprise, I guess, in this movie, Junior finds himself in a situation where maybe he doesn't want to be in, and he starts to realize that maybe Ben is not the guy that he thought he was, and maybe he genuinely cares about him and doesn't want to abandon him. And there's a point where John Ritter tries to kill Junior, and he can't do it, but he's happy that the kid has found himself in this situation. He thinks he's free, but then he remembers an earlier part of the movie where he's like, maybe I want to be a dad. And I don't know, there are parts of this movie where I genuinely like it, but there are parts where it's just, I don't know, it's so strange where you're like, I can't believe this got made at this time, because it does seem like this is the beginning of the low effort kids movie where like, here's something stupid, the treatment was less than 10 pages and it's just, here you go. One thing I will say about this movie is Michael Oliver, he got out of acting at the right time. I think his last movie was 1995. And John Ritter has this amazing ability about him. I mean, he's Mr. Three's Company, My 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter, and countless other movies during the 80s and 90s and the 70s. And he has this instant likability to him. And he's a character actor who does a lot of physical comedy, but it's something that I think a lot of actors don't have these days, or if they do, they are getting up in their years. It's an almost instantaneous likability to them.
Yeah, no, even I like John Ritter. I found him through Married My Teenage Daughter, and his and like he literally died during the production of that. Like literally
They were
shooting,
filming an episode or something.
Yeah, they were filming an episode and he passed away that night. And it was just shocking. Like that was one of those first like celebrity shocking deaths. Like just like, wait, what?
Yeah, actually, I've got a small story about John Ritter's passing. So at the time, I was living in London, Ontario, and I was working for AT&T. And at the time, our bosses would monitor our screens on our computers because why wouldn't they? And I always had a tab open to LiveJournal and some other websites because I did a lot of blogging back in the day. I kept a LiveJournal every day for like 5 years, since deleted. But anyway, I remember on the floor, I was the one to break the news of John Ritter's death. And for some reason, it was me, my friend Chantel, Anne, and maybe a few other people. We kind of took it as a bit of a gag where we're like, oh, John Ritter's passed away. We need to observe a moment of silence. But I seem to recall feeling something a little bit more because I remember the episode he did of Buffy, but he did a movie in the 90s or late 90s or early 90s called Stay Tuned. And that's a movie that is criminally underrated. If they ever wanted to remake that, I would be all up for that. So Stay Tuned is where basically he gets sucked into a portal to hell, but he has to relive television shows. And there's even a great Three's Company gag in there. But that's the one celebrity death that took me by surprise as an adult. The other one as a child, I remember John Candy, but I know some of the other actors who were considered for this role were Steve Martin. I could see that.
Yep.
Rick Moranis. I could see that.
Yep.
Dan Aykroyd. A little less, but I could still see it. And Richard Dreyfuss.
Yeah.
Weird pick, but sure. And it just worked out that we got John Ritter because I think the directors and the writers fought for him, saying, give him a chance. And one of the actors who auditioned for the role of Junior was Macaulay Culkin, because he'd come off of Home Alone and Uncle Buck. So the kid was hot, but they went with Michael Oliver, and I can't think of anybody else playing this role, although there's a third Problem Child movie where it's not him. Which I can't seem to find. It's evidently available on Amazon Video US, but not Canada.
It's weird in the fact that 3 is way harder to get a hold of.
Well,
I was actually looking at it and I'm just like, really 3? I don't actually think it is on Amazon here in the US. Let me just, because I distinctly remember Problem Child 3 being like, it's not available anywhere. No, it's not available anywhere.
Oh, wow.
US.
Because I looked it up last night and it's like, this is not available in your country. But I'm thinking, so you're telling me it was at some point, and evidently Universal never had any intentions to ever release it on streaming or on physical media, which I think is kind of a weird flex. I mean, just put out the Problem Child movie collection and the Problem Child animated series in one box set, sell it for like $25, it'd probably sell.
It'd probably be more than 25, to be honest.
But yeah,
if you throw the animated series in there.
But I was just watching the first movie and I'm thinking, you know what? It's mean-spirited, it's goofy, but it feels like it's definitely a snapshot of the 1990s. It feels...
Oh, yeah. It feels like a 90s film.
Yeah, and it just exists in this weird bubble. Now, the sequel, which came out a year later, features Ben and Junior have now moved out of Cold River. They're moving to a new town. And for some reason, Ben is the new eligible bachelor everybody wants to get involved with. And obviously, Junior doesn't like that his dad isn't paying as much attention to him. There's another quote-unquote problem child, a girl named Trixie, who is his comedic foil in this, who keeps upping the ante. She hits him with a fire hose at one point. There's an M80 gag where they basically try to kill Mr. Strickland from Back to the Future. And the scene that I think everybody remembers from this movie is the vomit scene on the ride. And I was watching that scene last night in preparation for this, and I kept watching it thinking, I could only think of one other puke scene in a movie that is as disgusting as this, but this one cranks it up to 11 because the writers for this movie were... The only reason they got hired, according to Wiki, is because the Universal or whoever was in charge of this knew they needed to get a script made fast. They didn't want to search around for people to create new characters or new ideas. So they intentionally made this as gross and as below the bar as they possibly could. Like, there's even an R-rated cut of this movie. And the only other vomit scene that I can think of is, I think, from Stand By Me, with the character of Lardass eating the pies at the contest, and he drinks Epicac or something beforehand, and everybody starts puking on each other. This scene gets way worse, and I'm sitting there watching it because I one of the things that I love is I love looking at how are special effects made. I love props, that sort of thing. I'm thinking they used really watery cream of wheat or oatmeal. And I'm watching and I'm thinking, everybody here who's throwing up seems to have eaten the exact same thing. But they're at a carnival, so sure.
When you're making that much vomit, yeah, it's going to be all the same. And screw the idea that, like, oh, people are having different stuff. Like, just when you're making that much vomit, you just gotta say screw it.
I was like watching this scene and I'm thinking, okay, so Junior is lucky nobody died during this. Although the only time I'm in Problem Child 2 where I think someone could have legitimately died or seriously gotten hurt is the barbecue explosion at the beginning, where he turns up the propane to like 11. And the guy has the Looney Tunes, gets blown across the road, lands in a pool with like the burnt face and everything. But the vomit scene is one that I think everybody remembers from the 90s, even if they don't know exactly where it's from. And this movie feels a little less put together than the other one. Like, its plots are all over the place. There's this woman named Lawanda, and for those of you who've been following me for 15 plus years, you know that's a name that sticks out in my mind. She wants to marry Ben for reasons, I guess. Probably some kind of an insurance scam or some kind of a write-off or something. And Big Ben Healy comes back into the picture. He's broke, but he's like a snake oil salesman. So he comes to live with Ben to kind of get his life back together, and shenanigans ensue. But one of the weird things that I found, the woman who played his wife in the first movie comes back, not as the same character. She comes back as the nurse that works at Junior's school, and that's Trixie's mom. And obviously people fall in love. The ending ends up with Ben marrying her. Trixie and Junior call a truce. They're like, you know what? Our parents like each other. We're kind of okay now. We'll cause trouble together. And big happy family at the end. Although when I'm watching it, I'm wondering how much the censors got a hold of this, because the stunts are so ridiculous. They don't seem as evil, although
it's definitely toned down, and I think that's a result of the first one being so dark.
Yeah, like I remember when he fed the cat, I guess, laundry detergent or something.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, you are not getting away with that. I know there was an uproar over the poster where it looked like Junior had put a cat inside of a laundry machine, and people got pissy at that, which, for good reason. In this one, he hypnotizes a dog who gets brought out of it by dog chow. There's like a weird, it's so strange because it feels so out of place. Junior swaps Lawanda's blood sample with a rabid dog or something, and it turns cartoon for like 30 seconds. And it's so out there. And Mr. Peabody's back, except now he's a principal at Junior's school. He skips him like 3 grades, so now he's in the 6th grade because Michael Oliver has obviously grown. He's had a pretty big growth spurt in like a year. And I did a little bit of digging last night because I was just curious to see whatever happened to these people post Problem Child. And I think the girl Ivy, what the hell is her name, Ken?
Ivanyan Shvan,
so
I believe is it's very Russian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found some pictures of her and Michael Oliver. I guess they were taken maybe as early as 2019. These kids have aged remarkably well. She's a real kind of cutie. I think she's a mom. She was a singer for a while. I know some of her other notable things. She was on Bill Nye the Science Guy a lot. I don't remember that at all. I know she emceed. Oh yeah, I think I just mentioned that. Yeah, she did a New Kids on the Block thing. She was a singer. She put out some stuff, but she pretty much moved away from the public eye. Same with Michael Oliver. After this, there was a podcast that they did with Gilbert Gottfried years later, and it was revealed, like I was mentioning, that there's an R-rated cut of Problem Child 2. The writers were like, we're going to make this as fucked up as possible. They wanted
because Universal just wanted to push that shit out the door.
Yeah, like they basically wanted to make a John Waters movie, but for kids. And I'm trying to figure which one is the better movie. I think 1 has a better structure to it, but I think 2's more watchable, if that makes more sense. But
I'd watch 2 10 times more than I would watch 1. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, like I don't know. I like a lot of the characters in 2, but I like the story of 1 because I think it's more emotionally centered. Now, you and I, Ken, were talking in one of our group chats that we do for the show, our production meetings, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. You said you noticed something about yourself while watching these last night. What did you mean?
I hate kids. I just hate kids.
I had a different reaction because that's not the thing that's not the where I thought you were going to go with this. Although I kind of see where you're coming from. So, for those of you that don't know, I'm adopted, and I kind of get where Junior's insecurity comes from, because if you're bounced around from home to home, I was very fortunate in that I was in one home until I was 18, emotionally and physically abusive at times, but I was in one place. Whereas Junior, you see him get bounced around. If he acts out once, which, he's bound to do in the first 10 minutes, something bad will happen. In fact, his dad steps on his toys and he wrecks the dad's trailer with a piece of construction equipment, literally bulldozes the thing to the ground. And it makes me think there's another person that I know. I'm not going to name them by name because this is their story. But I remember a story this person told me. And he told me how at 5 years old, his father destroyed all of his toys, threw them out because he was too old for them, and gave him away to the state. And that is something that has always stuck with me since I've known this person for a number of years. And watching Problem Child last night, I could see how that could seriously fuck up a kid.
Oh, yeah, no.
But yeah, I mean, to look at the system of adoption, it's an option that I think a lot more people should consider, if I'm going to be quite honest, if I'm just going to get on my serious soapbox for just a minute. There are a lot of kids in the system right now who don't have homes. And as long as you're willing to open your heart to them, you may very well be surprised. I'm going to go out on a limb and saying you're not going to pick up a miniature serial killer like Junior or Trixie, but I guess spin that wheel, find out what happens. And to talk about Michael Oliver's performance in these movies, I think this is a kid actor who knew what he was doing. He hit his marks. He was having fun with it. And the directors let him play with it. Now, the guy who directed the sequel, I'm just going to pull up his name. He's another guy who I think went on to a fairly significant career. I think Problem Child 2 may have actually been his second movie. Or sorry, Brian Levant. And
that was his first actual movie because he was doing TV before that.
Yeah, he did Beethoven, which is another 90s movie we're going to have to talk about with Charles Grodin. The Flintstones, which had an unbelievable marketing budget at McDonald's. He also did the sequel. He did Jingle All the Way, which, love it or hate it, it's a holiday classic. He did Snow Dogs, which that movie is
actually pretty good.
It's good, but that movie had a very troubled production.
Oh, yeah.
And then Are We There Yet? Now, Levant went on to say he's noticed that his movies aren't liked by critics. So he is quoted as saying, "I'm making movies for the audience that I was when I was sitting at home watching Garfield Goose and the Three Stooges on WGN. To those, reviews is an act of self-flagellation, but reviews be damned. When you're at Blockbuster and you're seeing family after family grab one of your movies off the shelf on a Friday night, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that." And that's something about the Problem Child movies that, again, it's a uniquely 90s blockbuster experience. Because I think back to when I was a teenager in the 90s and I'd go to Blockbuster with my friends or my girlfriend on a Friday night, and he's not wrong. You would go to the family section and you'd see a couple of kids and their mom and dad, and they'd always be grabbing shit like Beethoven or Problem Child. I distinctly remember the Problem Child 2 poster where it's Trixie and Junior sitting on the washing machine back to back and somebody's in the laundry machine or something, or the original Problem Child poster. I distinctly remember that. And obviously we don't have video stores anymore because we have like streaming and whatnot. But I don't know. I think those movies sum up the experience of being a family in the 90s, where it was cinematic dreck. Let's be honest here. It's shit. Mm-hmm. But you could watch it with your family, and the adults may realize, hey, that's kind of fucked up, but the kids are laughing and having a good time. It was generally pretty harmless. You could not get away with making these movies today. They'd have to be so ridiculously slapstick as to break the wall of reality. I think Nickelodeon is the only company of note that's making attempts at doing that, because Disney Channel stuff is so, it looks pretty, it may have a good cast, it may even have a good story, but it's so bland and flavorless.
I think modern Disney Channel original stuff is, when you start like the stuff that I grew up on out of the original stuff, I think it stopped around, it kind of started to go downhill once High School Musical came out. Like,
Yeah.
anything pre High School Musical actually had there was some really good stuff in there.
Yeah, like there is stuff like Holes, but I also think of like other movies that weren't necessarily Disney, but you think of stuff like Rookie of the Year, A Night in King Arthur's Court.
One of my favorites from the early 2000s, Catch That Kid with Kristen Stewart.
Yeah, you got Catch That Kid, but I also think of other movies which weren't as successful, but again, fit that weird 90s thing. You get movies like Blank Check. You get movies like Richie Rich.
Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire.
Jungle to Jungle.
Yep.
Like,
what was it? I'm on a date with the president's daughter.
Yeah. Like, there are movies that exist for children that have a charm about it. Like, one movie I want to talk about, and it would be a Jonathan Brandis double feature. I really like the movie Ladybugs, where Jonathan Brandis has to dress up as a girl named Martha to play on a soccer team. But there's another movie that starred Amanda Bynes that had a similar thing, just she dressed up as a boy, and I can't remember what it's called now. It's going to drive me crazy. And I know the LGBTQ community loves that movie because it treats it semi-seriously. And it's a retelling of a Shakespeare play, if I'm not mistaken.
Let's see.
Which Amanda Bynes, she made some interesting movies, and not all of them are terrible. I'm actually willing to go out on a limb and say that, even with her other, I guess, competitor at the time would have been like Hilary Duff. But anyway, we're getting off on a side tangent. But the point of the matter is, the problem child movies exist in that little bubble where if you want to see what it was like into at least my childhood, for sure. Because Ken, how old are you? You're like, what, 34?
I'm turning 30 in December.
30. Oh my God, you are so young. So I'm 40 years old. So I'm 10 years older than you, but your film knowledge is infinitely higher than mine. So you have a unique perspective. Like, I want to talk about the movies of your childhood, maybe on a future one, maybe movies of the 2000s. Might be something kind of interesting. So the last movie we're going to talk about here kind of ties into these movies, as we mentioned. Macaulay Culkin was the man in the 90s. He made a smash hit, Uncle Buck, where he played a supporting character, but people loved him. Home Alone, need we say more? And then he started experimenting with things. And I seem to recall he did The Good Son after this, which is...
No, Good Son's 93.
93, so he did it before this. And I guess that was him trying to branch out and try different things, where he worked with a very young Elijah Wood, so Frodo. So the page...
Who was also a big child star.
Yeah, but he really took off after Lord of the Rings, and then he just kind of did whatever he wanted to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Page Master tells the story of Richard, and he's this kid who lives and dies by numbers. He's like, did you know 7% of household accidents are caused by ladders? It's a really weird character quirk to give this kid, but he gets sent down by his dad, who's played by Ed Bigley Jr., which I don't know why we tried to make him a thing in the 90s. I remember him more from Star Trek than anything. And I remember his appearance on The Simpsons, where he made a bicycle that was powered by his own sense of self-satisfaction. And I've never forgotten the way someone said that line. But anyway, so he goes down to the hardware store and he gets caught in like a freak storm, but he's riding this bicycle, which the prop department must have had a lot of fun making it, because it's like yellow. It's like yellow. There's like lights on it. There's like a safety backing up sound to it. He's wearing like a helmet and everything. He gets caught in this freak storm that starts shooting lightning at him. Honestly, I'm surprised this kid didn't check the weather before he left. And he runs into this library, and he runs into Christopher Lloyd. And Christopher Lloyd's like, "You're here for a book. Maybe you'll need adventure or fantasy." And he's like, "Nah, man, I just need to use the phone." He's like, "It's by this whatever." And he comes into this really cool looking set, and it's this library.
That library set is just like, as someone that was really big into reading, like this is heaven.
Yeah, like, and it's one of those things that I love the artwork in that scene. Like, on the ceiling, there's this wizard who looks literally like the cover of the AD&D second edition Dungeon Master's Guide.
Yeah,
there's
the art direction is just phenomenal in this movie.
Although it's strange, though, my roommate came home while we were prepping to record this, and she pointed something out to me, and I never quite noticed it. I would be very curious to know who the character designer was for this, because I really wondered if they share something with the Fern Gully people. Because
possibly.
Yeah, because when...
No, actually, it would be, because it's all Fox, so probably.
Yeah, because I was looking at it, and just the way that Richard looks as a human reminds me a lot of Krista from Fern Gully. And I'm thinking, I just wonder if it was like a similar artist or something. And the voice cast for this is fairly extensive. So you get Christopher Lloyd as the Page Master, aka the Wizard Dude. Patrick Stewart as Adventure, which I didn't realize because I'm listening for the Captain Picard isms, and I didn't hear any.
He is almost unrecognizable in this movie.
Yeah, I'm glad.
It's one of those Patrick Stewart roles where you don't hear Patrick Stewart in it.
Yeah, and I was thinking, I'm really glad he's not doing Captain Picard, because this would have been after TNG had ended, because TNG ended in 94. And
he probably recorded it at the end, near the end of TNG's production.
Yeah.
Because again, because this is an animated film, they probably recorded these voices like year and a half before it even came out.
Mm-hmm. You also had Whoopi Goldberg, who is hot after Sister Act, but she's always been a super popular pop culture icon. She plays it. She's Whoopi Goldberg, but she flies.
You know exactly what you're getting.
And I think it's Frank Welker. So Megatron is the voice of horror. You get Leonard Nimoy, and he's a guy I wish who had did more cartoon voices, because obviously that's Mr. Spock, but that's also Galvatron. And you get hints of Galvatron in his performance. Like, there's this way he says certain words reminds me of Galvatron. And so Richard has to get to the exit, but he has to go through the lands of adventure, horror, and fantasy. So basically he has to go through these three trials, but he runs into Long John Silver, he runs into Ahab, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and eventually this dragon. And it's this kid learning to face his fears and realize maybe life isn't as scary as he makes it out to be. He's not as nervous as he's led to believe about all these numbers he's surrounded himself with his entire life. Now, going into this movie, I don't know what I was expecting, because I've had a few people tell me say it's one of their childhood favorites. And I'm going into this movie with fairly high expectations. And I'm watching it, and I got to tell you, Ken, I was bored.
It's a film that, like, if you were the right age at the right time, it connected with you. I fully understand you going, like, it's slow. It's a very slow paced film. Even though it's a very short film. The pacing is very methodical and slow, and I again, like, I love this movie. I was big at I was a big reader as a kid, and the idea that, like, you go on this adventure through all these classical stories of fantasy, horror, and obviously adventure, and it just, like, it you recognize all this stuff from pop culture and stuff. Like, I had never read some of these books when I first saw this movie, but again, I've gone back and read those in the past. But it's one of those, like, seminal childhood films that you're going to remember as a kid, and if you don't watch it in that childhood mindset, you're not going to get it.
Well, it's so strange because I feel like the 90s had this glut of animated films that came out. Some of them memorable, some of them not. But I think of movies like Rock-a-Doodle, Cats Don't Dance, The Pebble and the Penguin, The Swan Princess. And they all have a very similar look to them. And some of them are more memorable for some of their names. The Page Master just kind of gets forgotten, I feel, despite having Macaulay Culkin attached to it. Because, like I said, arguably one of the largest stars of the 1990s. And this movie had video games. It had tie-in stuff. I want to say there was even action figures of this stuff, too.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember that as a kid.
Yeah, and it's just kind of forgotten about. And I think this movie's been released on Blu-ray in the last 10 years at least.
I mean, it's a Fox Blu-ray, so it's cheap.
Yeah.
Like, you can get it for like $5.
Yeah, and I don't know what I wanted from this. And when I look at the three movies we've watched today, Problem Child stands above these movies as infinitely more watchable. But you obviously have bigger star power in the Page Master. Yet, if you asked people to name, I don't know how I want to phrase this question. I don't think you're going to get as many people listing movies from their childhood. I don't think the Page Master is going to come up very often, but I think you would hear Problem Child come up, especially people in my age range and maybe a little bit younger.
In your age range, yes. In my age range, it's Page Master.
Yeah. See, yeah, I don't know. It's one of those weird cross movies because I guess it came out at the right time where my age group was starting to look more at the teenage comedies.
It was also heavily promoted as a
Christmas release, I think.
It's been released so many times on home video that it's absolutely hilarious.
And I found out, I was reading the wiki on this. I'm not really going to get into it, but there was a huge legal drama over this movie that almost prevented this movie from coming out. Like, there's like a writing dispute. They're like, no, I wrote this. No, I wrote this. Either you put my name on this or this isn't coming out. And at the time, I think it was one of the most expensive legal things in Hollywood. And I just kept thinking, over the fucking Page Master? Really?
I mean, there are literally 5 credited people on the writing staff.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think the Page Master, I will go out on a limb and say this. I think you could remake this movie. Yep. I think the Page Master would actually turn into a pretty cool kids television series because there's so much cool shit in public domain. Or if Disney got a hold of this, you could do it. I think there's honestly something there. Now, we're going to close this out. I found this out. So because I'm a person who loves 80s and 90s cartoons, turns out Problem Child, for example, had its own animated series.
Yep.
Which ran for 2 seasons on the USA Network, which honestly surprised me. Now, the only cast member who came back to voice their character was Gilbert Gottfried, and I'm pretty sure that guy would show up at a 7-Eleven opening before he passed away because he was just enthusiastic. He loved his craft, and honestly, he didn't have to do that because he was off Aladdin. He had Disney money at that time. So it's not like he needed the money. I guess he just did it because he thought it was fun. And there was another Macaulay Culkin animated show that came out. It was on CBS and it was called Wish Kid, where this kid caught a piece of a falling star and he had a magical baseball glove and he could wish one thing per day, but it was like the monkey's paw. Basically, something crazy would happen, but he'd get to be like, hey, you now have a race car, but the car runs out of gas or some shit like that. In doing further research for this movie, for this show, there's a Turkish child or problem child remake, and I found a clip of it online. I think the whole movie's up on YouTube. There's a scene in the first movie where Junior throws a cat at Jack Warden and he falls down the stairs, and the cat is obviously a prop. In the Turkish remake, it is not a prop.
Oh no, it's a cat.
It's a cat.
Yep, that sounds like Turkish remake to me.
And it's funny because it cuts so weird. So they throw this live cat at this person. It attaches to his face and it cuts away so quick because you can tell the cat just did the speedball rebound off him. And then you see this. The lighting has completely changed. The house is completely changed. And this Turkish man is falling down the stairs. And for some reason, the clip I watched is cut to Coolio's Gangster's Paradise. It is, again, so 90s and so strange that I've seen 2 Turkish movies in my life. I've seen Turkish Star Wars and I've seen Turkish Rambo. Because a friend of mine from way back in the day actually owns the film rights to Turkish Rambo. And I remember getting it as a gift like 15 years ago. But yeah, so that was a thing. Yeah, it's weird to think Macaulay Culkin would have a troubled childhood after his big successes. Now, arguably, he's really cleaned himself up in the last couple of years. He does a lot of online stuff. Michael Oliver did a reunion photo with the girl from Problem Child 2, like I said, back in 2019. They both grown up, and Michael has said he's living a quiet life away from the spotlight and is just kind of living his own life. And the girl is just kind of being a mom or doing her own thing. Gilbert Gottfried has passed away. John Ritter has passed away. One thing that did come out of these movies is John Ritter, actually, the girl who played his wife in the first movie and played the nurse in the second, they actually got married in 1999, and they were together until his death. And you could tell there was a chemistry between those two.
You can tell the two of them were very smitten with each other.
Yeah, and that's something I really like that I walked away from the 3 movies we've watched today, is I gained a new appreciation for John Ritter. And I really miss that guy. And Macaulay Culkin, when I think about him, I wish he'd taken another stab at an animated project, maybe one that would have been a little bit more suited to his talents. I'm not saying he should have replaced Jonathan Taylor Thomas as young Simba in Lion King, but I'm surprised Disney didn't give him a shot at something. But since this was like a Fox, Warner Brothers, or Turner, whatever the hell it was, they probably just couldn't sway the kid with money. There's probably a lot of contracts involved. I'm honestly surprised he didn't try again. Maybe he was burned out after the Wish Kid thing because, growing up as a child actor in Hollywood. I mean, it worked out for Michael Oliver. He got out. Macaulay Culkin had trouble for a number of years. And like I said, he's only really turned himself around in the last little bit. But hey, he's doing his own thing. Good for him. Funny guy. You see him a lot on YouTube now, and doing commercials around Christmas time. So I guess, Ken, I don't know. What conclusions have you drawn from today, or what are your thoughts?
So I don't like the Problem Child movies. I think they're spiteful. And Pagemaster is, again, up there as some of my favorite childhood films. Even looking back at it, I'm like, no, this is actually quite enjoyable. I know, like, I'm always the weird kid. I was always the weird kid. I always had different tastes than the mainstream a lot of the time. And I was actually looking up the art director for Pagemaster, and he is very much traditional Disney. One of his first jobs was working on The Black Cauldron, which is also one of those very seminal films in Disney's history. Like, the movie's not good, 100%. The movie is terrible, but that film and its production hell paved the way for so many people, like Don Bluth and some of the other famous animators of future Disney were shaped by that movie. And also the art director, he directed one of the more memorable moments of the Fantasia 2000 movie, which is the Symphony No. 5, which is the very New Orleans style, New Yorkie sequence. That's one of the big ones that is memorable. That and the flamingo sequence.
That's cool. Yeah, I had no clue. So hopefully, folks, you've enjoyed joining us today. If you want to watch these movies, I think you can find some of them on Tubi. Amazon would probably be your best bet. I know there was a pack that came out that had Problem Child 1 and 2, Kindergarten Cop, and something else. I'm sure if you look on Amazon or eBay, you can find these movies fairly well. Are they worth going out of your way to watch? No. But if you happen to have $5 in your pocket and you're going through Walmart someday and you want to take a walk down memory lane, sure, why the hell not? I can certainly think of worse ways to spend a Saturday afternoon. Would I recommend showing these to your kids? Maybe Pagemaster. You know what? Why not? Would I recommend the Problem Child movies? No, I wouldn't. Maybe the first one with parental guidance, I might recommend, because I do think there's an interesting story hidden in there, and I think kids might like John Ritter. So that's what I'll say. So anyway, folks, we are going to close up the Loose Cannon video store. So it's time to sweep the popcorn off the floor. It's time to put the movies back on the shelf. As always, for This Week in Geek, we have been
Ken Reels.
And I've been Mike the Birdman, one of your awesome video store clerks, saying, be kind, rewind, and we'll catch you guys next time right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Are either one of these any good? Sir?
What?
Are either one of these any good?
I don't watch movies.
Quick, change the channel.
You're wasting your life making shit! Nobody cares! These movies are terrible!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.